But I didn't give up. I thought if I treated David well, he'd warm up to me. My sister was abroad, and I was by his side. One day, he'd see my worth. For 3 years, I cared for him meticulously. He had stomach issues, I studied recipes. He had headaches and trouble sleeping, I learned acupuncture. In hindsight, I was too naive. Who would fall for a nanny? Forget it, we were just torturing each other. I trembled, trying to sign the divorce papers. Suddenly, my phone rang. It was my mom. "Cherry, your sister is back. She's on the afternoon flight. Tonight, come home with David for a family dinner." My mom sounded unusually happy. I spoke, my voice hoarse. "Why did she come back suddenly?" My mom sighed. "I always felt that guy was no good, but your sister insisted on marrying him." Sure enough, after they married, his true nature showed. He fooled around with other women even when your sister was pregnant, leading to her miscarriage. She's back, so she must have figured it out. That's good. Right, don't bring up the past when you see her. Don't upset her. My mom's voice droned on, but I wasn't listening anymore. I suddenly realized why David was so eager for a divorce. Jane was back. My head spun, flooding with strange thoughts. I felt like I was living in a book. Jane was the main character, and I was the supporting role. I fell for David and married him but gave up when the heroine returned. Later, Jane couldn't have kids. I gave up my child to them and watched them live as a happy family. I was shocked. Was I losing my mind? In that moment, I realized I no longer loved David. I put down the pen, refusing to sign. Why should I step aside just because Jane's back and let them have their happy ending? Before the divorce, I'd make them uncomfortable. I'd be a villainous supporting character. I took a cab to Cherry's house. David and Jane arrived together. Jane looked more worn out compared to 3 years ago, not as lively. But still, she was the center of attention wherever she went. Dad and Mom surrounded her with concern. It had rained. Jane was dry, but David's sleeve was wet. I could imagine he had sheltered her under the umbrella, letting the rain drench him. With David, he always walked ahead while I followed. People can't compare, right? I pushed down my disappointment and walked to David, worried. "Honey, how did your clothes get wet?" I clung to David's arm affectionately. Jane's gaze shot over, her eyes vacant. David tried to pull away, but I hugged him tight. "Your clothes are wet, you'll catch a cold. You're the backbone of the company, you can't get sick. Let's go upstairs and change." Watching the vein pulse on his forehead, I could see his struggle to maintain his composure. But still, preserving his image as a husband, he followed me upstairs. The moment we were in the room, he shoved me away. "Stop clinging to me. You're my husband. Why can't I hang on to your arm?" David took a deep breath. "Did you sign the divorce agreement?" "No, I'm pregnant." "I told you, I had a vasectomy." "Are you sure the doctor didn't scam you?" "You're the only man I've been with these 3 years. Don't try to weasel out of it," I said coldly. David looked at me with a livid face. "Cherry, what happened to you?" For the past 3 years, I'd always been the perfect wife and mother in front of David. Gentle and considerate, always listening to him. He had never seen me this harsh and prickly. In reality, the gentle and considerate me was just a facade. I'm the type who never lets things go. If I can't make him fall for me, I'll make sure he bleeds. I need to make up for these years of humility and pain. I folded my arms and looked at him. What's wrong with me? At least I'm better than someone who doesn't even recognize his own trousers. David was so angry he couldn't even speak. Downstairs, I reverted to being gentle. I sat next to David, acting cute. "Honey, I want some fish, but it's too far. Can you get it for me?" "Honey, my water's empty. Get me more, please." I kept bossing David around. David and Jane both looked upset. Maybe Jane realized that the guy who used to follow her around is now someone else's husband. Jane made an excuse about being tired and went upstairs halfway through dinner. David couldn't take it anymore and went to the bathroom. "Cherry, your sister just went through a breakup." Acting like that with David might upset her, my mom scolded me quietly. I almost laughed. This family has always revolved around Jane. When Jane ran away, they made me marry in her place, never caring about my happiness. Now that Jane's back, she's all they care about. They don't think there's anything wrong with my husband being nice to Jane. Jane is like the main character of this world, and with her around, I'm always just a background character. No one cares about me, no one thinks about me. I should have been used to it by now. I lifted my head, hiding the sadness in my eyes. With a pitiful look, I said, "Mom and Dad, I'm pregnant." That's why, before I could finish, I suddenly heard the sound of a glass breaking. Raising my head, I saw Jane standing empty-handed, her face filled with shock. David ran out of the bathroom, grabbed my hand, and rushed us out. Back home, David glared at me furiously. "I really am pregnant, isn't it worth mentioning?" Ignoring David's murderous glare, I went to the bathroom, recalling Jane's shock and David's anger. I suddenly felt a strange satisfaction. Maybe I do have a knack for playing the villainess after all. The next day, I slept in until it was bright outside. It was already 8 o'clock. I walked out of the bedroom and saw David sitting on the sofa, looking furious. David's a really picky guy, even with his coffee. Normally, I'd prep his breakfast and coffee for him. But now, I didn't feel like catering to him. Sleeping in felt great. Hungry? I asked. David didn't answer, but his stomach growled. I'll order some food. David looked at me in disbelief. Before the delivery arrived, David slammed the door and left. I couldn't help but give myself a thumbs up. Good thing I didn't order for him. In the afternoon, while getting a spa treatment, I got a call from David's assistant. Cherry, the company cafeteria food doesn't suit David's tastes, so he hasn't eaten. Oh right, I always took care of his lunch too. Over the years, I've spoiled him with my cooking. Anything else, he barely touches. Don't worry, when he's starving, he'll eat. In the evening, I suddenly received a message. It was a picture sent by Jane. The man in the photo with the high nose bridge and sharp profile was David. She quickly retracted it. Sorry, wrong send, Jane texted. Now comment update to tag you on part 2.